From the media district adjacent, it's time to take another deep plunge into the issues and topics that face Burbank. Let's see what we have on the plate to dissect today.
Hello, Burbank. Craig Short here with you once again, and we've asked John and Jenny to take a quick listen and recap the October 1st City Council meeting. So here we go. Take it away, John and Jenny.
So should we just dive right in then? Let's talk about those Burbank City Council meeting from October 1st. There were some pretty interesting discussions.
You won't believe what sparked some heated debates and those deep dive requests. We'll see which ones actually went somewhere.
From leaf blowers to online civility, it seems like Burbank had it all. But first, let's talk leaf blowers. Maya Shaban is back, and she's still on her mission for a greener Burbank.
She's definitely persistent.
This time, she's calling for a fast transition to electric leaf blowers, like really pushing for it, and a solid plan to phase out those gas-powered ones. What do you think? Is this just another passionate plea, or are things actually changing?
I think it's part of a bigger trend we're seeing. Cities all over the U.S. and even globally are really trying to find that balance.
Balance between what exactly?
Between being environmentally responsible, of course, but also thinking about residents' needs and expectations.
So it's not as simple as just saying, let's go green and calling it a day.
Right. It's about noise pollution, the impact on workers' health, even how things look in the community. It's complicated.
Finding solutions that work on all those different levels, that's a challenge. Remember last time this came up?
It kind of faded out, didn't it?
Yeah, it just fizzled out. But this time feels different, especially because Councilmember Anthony actually requested a deep dive on the issue. That's got to be a good sign, right?
It's definitely noteworthy.
Yeah.
It seems like they're moving from just acknowledging the issue to really trying to find solutions.
So you think he's serious about this whole deep dive thing?
I think so. Councilmember Anthony really likes to look at the data before making decisions.
That tracks.
So I wouldn't be surprised if this deep dive leads to a really detailed analysis of all the different options, like a full cost-benefit breakdown.
Okay, so maybe there's some hope for quieter, less fume-filled streets in Burbank after all. But leaf blowers weren't the only thing on people's minds, right? Things took a more serious turn when David Donahue spoke.
He's the community member, right?
Yeah, and he shared his experience with online hate speech.
That's heavy stuff.
It was powerful. He talked about being targeted himself, but also seeing other people harassed online just for speaking their minds about local issues. And it really made everyone stop and think about the real-world consequences of all that negativity.
It's so true, though.
Yeah.
It's easy to forget that what happens online doesn't just stay online. It affects real people in the real world.
Exactly. And sadly, this isn't just a Burbank problem, is it?
Not at all. We're seeing this more and more all across the country. People, especially those who are vocal about local issues, are facing a lot of hostility online.
And that can make people afraid to speak up, right? Like, why bother sharing your opinion if you're just going to get attacked? I mean, it can really discourage people from getting involved in their communities.
Exactly. And that's a big problem for democracy. A healthy democracy needs people to participate, to share their ideas, even if they disagree. But when people are afraid to speak up, it undermines the whole system.
It reminded me of that situation in Name of City, where a city council member actually resigned because of online bullying. They just couldn't take it anymore.
It's awful. It makes you wonder if there's anything cities can do to protect people.
Exactly. Should Burbank consider creating some kind of guidelines for online conduct, especially for people in leadership roles?
That's a tough question, and a lot of cities are struggling with it right now. It's tricky because you want to protect free speech, but you also want to make sure people feel safe and respected when they're participating in public forums.
So it's a balancing act.
Exactly. Some cities have decided to create social media policies for their elected officials. They outline what's considered acceptable behavior online. Others are focusing more on digital literacy, like teaching people how to engage online in a positive and respectful way.
So it's not just about censoring people, but about creating a culture of respect, even in the digital space. It's something to keep an eye on, for sure.
All right, let's shift gears now. From the virtual world to something I think we can all relate to, the school run. Remember those mornings trying to get everyone out the door and to school on time? Oh yeah, the chaos.
It turns out school traffic isn't just a personal headache. It's a hot topic at City Hall, too.
And it should be. Making sure kids have safe routes to school is incredibly important. We should all be concerned about that.
Absolutely. Shauna Millman, who's a PTA representative, and Leo, a teacher, both brought this up at the meeting. They both stressed how important it is to have better safety measures during those crazy drop-off and pickup times. Specifically, they mentioned wanting a more visible police presence.
That makes sense. Having officers there to help direct traffic and make sure people are following the rules can make a big difference.
Right, especially for the kids who are walking or biking to school.
Exactly. This really ties into that bigger conversation about pedestrian safety and the kind of infrastructure we're building. Burbank has been making some good progress with that Complete Streets initiative.
Which is all about making the streets safer for everyone, right? Not just cars.
Exactly. But there's always more to do, especially around schools. You've got so many kids, often really young kids, trying to navigate busy streets.
Yeah.
You need to make those areas as safe as possible.
And sometimes it takes a village, right? And it also just reminds you that this isn't just about statistics or budget numbers. It's about real families, real kids. We need to make sure they can get to school safely.
Couldn't agree more. It's about creating a community where everyone feels safe and supported.
Okay, get ready for this. We're about to step into a world that's always interesting and, let's be honest, often pretty contentious. Housing and development in Burbank.
Hold on to your hats, everyone.
Because these last couple of meetings have been buzzing with talk about a group called the Livable Communities Initiative, or LCI for short.
Ah, yes. The LCI. They've definitely gotten people talking, haven't they?
They've presented some pretty bold ideas for Burbank's future, and it's safe to say they've ruffled a few feathers along the way.
Their advocate, James Ingram, he really knew how to work a room. Did you catch that part where he quoted the mayor?
When he said, "Let's make Burbank freaking awesome." How could I forget?
I think he got everyone's attention with that one.
He definitely did. But the LCI, they're about more than just catchy slogans, right? They've got some pretty big ideas for how to change Burbank. More walkable neighborhoods, better public transit, and of course, more housing.
That's right.
Which brings us to this whole gentle density concept.
Ah, yes. Gentle density. The million-dollar phrase.
It does seem to be the hot topic lately, but what does it actually mean? It feels like one of those urban planning buzzwords that gets thrown around without a clear explanation.
It's definitely open to interpretation.
So for those of us who haven't memorized the zoning code, can you break it down for us?
Well, imagine those European cities, where you've got buildings at different heights, shops on the ground floor, and people living above.
Charming, right?
Exactly. It's about creating that kind of mixed-use, walkable environment, integrating housing into existing neighborhoods without, overwhelming the character of the place.
So more like adding a few townhomes or a low-rise apartment building here and there instead of those massive out-of-place developments.
You got it.
That actually sounds kind of nice.
The idea is to create a more vibrant, walkable community where people have options.
Makes sense. And they had a specific example, right? The project on Reese and Verdugo.
Right, the Reese and Verdugo project. They're talking about a mixed-use building with 13 units, some retail space on the ground floor, and even rooftop patios.
So not exactly a skyscraper.
Not even close.
But I get the sense that not everyone is thrilled about this whole gentle density thing.
You're right. It's definitely a sensitive topic. Change can be hard.
Yeah.
And in a place like Burbank, which has such a strong sense of identity, such a rich history.
People get attached to things as they are.
Exactly. And any kind of development, especially when it comes to housing, can feel like a threat to that.
So how did the council react? Were they on board with the LCI's vision, more density, a more urban feel for Burbank?
It was a mixed bag, really. You had some council members who were very enthusiastic about the LCI's proposals. They praised their vision, talked about the need for more housing options.
Especially for younger generations and seniors, right? They're the ones who are getting priced out of Burbank.
Right. They see this as a way to make Burbank more accessible, more equitable, keep it vibrant,
But not everyone was on the same page, I'm guessing.
Definitely not. Some council members were much more hesitant. They were worried about the potential downsides, more traffic, parking issues, that kind of thing.
That's always a concern with more development, right?
Right. And they also talked about the need to preserve what they called the Burbank way of life, that small town feel, the sense of community. They argued for a more cautious approach.
Making sure any new development fits in with Burbank's existing character.
Exactly. Because Burbank has a unique charm, a certain aesthetic that people love, and no one wants to see that disappear. So it's this constant back and forth, this tension between wanting progress, wanting to meet the needs of a growing city.
But also wanting to hold on to the things that make Burbank special.
Exactly. That's the heart of the gentle density debate. How do you find that balance?
between progress and preservation, between making room for new people and new ideas.
Without losing sight of what makes Burbank, Burbank.
It's a tough needle to thread. So what's the latest? It sounds like the council is still trying to figure all of this out. It's like Burbank is going through a bit of an identity crisis, right? Trying to figure out how to balance that small town charm with, well, the realities of being a city that's growing and changing.
It's a story playing out in towns and cities all over the country.
And what I find interesting about all of this is it's not just a bunch of politicians making decisions in a vacuum.
Yeah.
We're seeing regular people getting involved, making their voices heard. Groups like the LCI are really pushing the conversation forward.
It's a good reminder that citizen engagement matters.
It really does.
The fact that a group like LCI, which is completely volunteer run, by the way, the fact that they've managed to get the council's attention to even have this debate in the first place, it says a lot.
It shows you what can happen when people organize and speak up about what they care about, right?
Exactly. And it's a good reminder that in a world of online petitions and like virtual town halls, there's still something to be said for showing up in person, making your voice heard face to face.
There's something about that direct connection, right?
Absolutely. And speaking of connections, I thought it was interesting that Councilmember Takahashi actually mentioned that she's met with LCI.
Oh, that's right. She brought that up during one of the meetings.
She did.
Eh.
And it wasn't just a quick handshake either. It sounds like they actually sat down and talked about the issues.
She seemed genuinely interested in hearing their perspective, even if she doesn't agree with everything they're saying.
Right, exactly. Now, whether she'll actually support their proposals, that's another question. But the fact that she's willing to at least listen, to understand where they're coming from, that's a good sign.
It shows that she's open to new ideas, even if they challenge the status quo, which, let's be honest, is something that's needed sometimes.
Definitely. So what does all of this mean for our listeners? For the people of Burbank? It means they're living in a city that's at a crossroads. There are some big questions about the future, and the answers aren't always clear.
It can feel overwhelming for sure.
It can. But here's the thing. You're not powerless in all of this. You have a voice, and you can use it. So go to those city council meetings.
Whether it's in person, online, just be present.
Read up on the issues, talk to your neighbors, and make your voice heard. Write to your council members, let them know what you think. Tell them what kind of Burbank you want to live in.
Because this isn't just about abstract ideas or political debates. It's about real lives, real communities. It's about shaping a future for Burbank that reflects the values and the hopes of the people who live there.
And that's a collaborative process. It takes open communication, a willingness to listen to different points of view, even when especially when we disagree.
And on that note, here's something for you to chew on. What if, instead of seeing the LCI as this fringe group with all these radical ideas, we saw them as like a reflection of a changing Burbank?
Interesting.
Like maybe they represent a growing part of the community that's looking for something different.
A generation that wants a more sustainable, walkable, community-oriented way of life.
Exactly.
That's an interesting way to look at it, because cities, they aren't static, are they? They change. They adapt. They respond to the needs and the desires of the people who live there. And maybe, just maybe, the LCI's vision, even if it seems a bit out there to some, maybe it's just a glimpse into what Burbank could become. A city that's both forward-thinking and true to its roots.
That's a great way to put it. It's about finding that balance, right? So there you have it, folks. A little peek behind the curtain of Burbank civic life. It's messy, it's complicated.
But it's also incredibly important.
Because these conversations, these debates, they're shaping the future of a community.
And remember, you're not just a bystander in this process. You have a role to play in shaping the Burbank of tomorrow.
We hope this deep dive has given you some things to think about. And who knows, maybe we'll see you at the next city council meeting.
Thank you for watching the latest My Burbank video. If you have it in your heart, please consider helping us by clicking on the super thanks down below. Or even better, go to our channel and consider a membership. Your support is what keeps My Burbank going strong.